other live that's starting right now. In the meantime, be blessed, hug your families, tell them you love them, and remember, be kind to those who are having a rough day. You may be the only smile they see all day. We will see you again tomorrow with updates on this. And like I said, join me on the other side. Thank you guys so very much. Appreciate you. And welcome back. We are here. We are switching gears. Um, I am running a little behind on this. I do have a hard stop. Hi, Eddie. First in chat. Thank you. Wow, what a day. I am going to be streaming this trial, but I do have a hard stop at 5:30 my time. Okay. So with that, we are running approximately an hour behind court. What I will do is what we don't do now, I will be back probably about 9 o'clock Central Standard Time in the evening, and then I'll come back on and pick this up. Okay. So let's get, sorry, let me get it all set up. Do the share screen thing. Once again, if you were joining us from the previous live, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You are a blessing to me. All right, let's get going. I'm going to share, add stage, and begin. Also, I might, depending on their speed and their talking, I don't know who all this is. Oh, this is the family. Okay. I'm going to set the speed up a little bit. And if it's too fast, we'll correct it. Hello, everybody. Y'all are awesome. Thank you for joining.
A better place. I mean, when we struggle from mental illness, it's a chemical imbalance. Just as most addicts have chemical imbalances out there, who wants to stop using, who can't. It's something that we suffer from. I don't think sending him to prison is going to deter anybody who suffers from a mental illness. They need to be surrounded by healthcare professionals who can treat him, and so that he gets the right treatment that he needs.
He's been in and out of mental health court, so now he's going to go to prison on this thing. But you were saying to me when we were walking down here, you don't think that that's going to help him in any way?
It's not, because the people in prison are trained to, for prisoners. They're not trained for people who suffers from mental illnesses. So he will not get the proper treatment that he needs.
This case went internationally viral. How has your family been dealing with that?
Well, we've all just been thinking more, of our rights as individuals. And anybody whose mind is not of a normal person should not be judged in a manner of a person who's normal like you or myself. He tried to speak for himself, which I just think he should have never been allowed to take the stand or speak on his own behalf because of his condition.
What was your thought when you saw this video that went viral? I mean, you obviously are talking about your brother here.
Yes, I just think his reactions were not premeditated. It was triggered because he seemed to have been pleading for his freedom. He has been off his psych meds since he got out of jail, but because he doesn't have an appointment until March of this year, so he has not taken anything at all. And I think when the judge says, it's time for you to get a taste of, became a trigger, and in his mind, he felt threatened. We all have the capabilities to do what Deobra did, and that is to leap that high. When our fight or flight mechanism response is triggered when we're threatened, we can jump that high, we can leap that high. So in his mind, it's realistic that his life was feeling threatened, and that's what happened.
Do you think that if the judge
didn't say that last line, that this would be a different story?
I strongly believe that. I strongly believe that because it was that statement that was the trigger.
Have you had any communication with him since Wednesday?
No, I haven't.
I have. And actually, once we found out that he didn't appear in court on that day, my mind automatically went to, what did you do to him? Where is he at? When I came, media everywhere, and I go over to the jail, and I'm trying to do the visits, and there's no visitation for him at this moment. Then why? Where is he? He hasn't called. But apparently, Tony Abatangelo, a good attorney that I know, was able to access someone from the inside to actually call. And they called me last night. And I explained to Deobra, like, it's not a circus. What you did, no way do we condone it, but I know your struggles, and I know the voices that you hear. And I just felt I tried to soothe them and, say, just come to court and, whatever's handed down, just take it. Like, what else can you really truly do? But I just felt like to even be going back in front of a courtroom, that was totally biased. Like, why? What, you want to send a message or what? At the same time, like she said, he suffers from mental illness. It's always been documented. It's always been stated. Even when I got them from the foster care system at the age of 12, it was documented that he was severely emotionally disturbed. By the time he was 18, he left and branched out on his own. But every day, like you say, he's trying to do better. He just got released November of 2023. 6 weeks ago? Something like that. He just got an apartment, did everything right, was in contact with parole and probation. He was released to them in their custody. So now you said you're going to send him back? What sense? In his mind, he didn't think he was going back. He was ready to go to work the following day. As we sat in the courtroom, he got a dispatch from the Teamsters. He was just in a better place. And like you say, I just feel he was tricked.
Do you think that this will, essentially him being sentenced, will undo all the work that he's done to repair his mental state?
No, definitely not. It's only going to put him in a
Okay, guys, no offense. I'm going to skedaddle this forward. Y'all can go back and watch that. I'm really struggling with the hearing of all that wind noise and everything. It's just hurting my ears. I apologize, but if y'all want to see that, we can skim me back later.
Okay, is that right, Mr. Arnold?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
How's
When
the sound, Ronnie?
Jury gets in here, I will go ahead and announce that. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, hopefully these jurors will give you some, you may sit down.
Okay.
Sensei, come here. Lay down. Lay down. The court, I have this gained 100%. I cannot change the gain on this. Yeah, see, it's all the way up. And then I have it all the way up on mine as well. So right now we don't. I have a hard stop in 2 hours. Well, hour and a half. We've got a lot of just sitting around, nothing happening.
Will counsel please stipulate to the presence of the jury?
There we go.
All right, you all may be seated. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be getting started in just a moment or two. It is very important that you be here on time. We've lost about 18 minutes. So we're all like brides. We can't get started without all of you here. All right? All right. First order of business is that the parties have stipulated to the admission of exhibits, plaintiff's exhibits 62 and 63. Those exhibits are admitted. All right. Next witness, or first witness, I should say.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Mary Kay Hovis.
please raise your right hand? You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this section shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Mary Kay Holtz, MaryKayHolthus.
Did you get that? She said that really fast.
I was a little nervous on this side.
Counsel?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Are you currently a judicial district court judge?
I am,
How long have you been on the bench?
since 2019,
Were you elected or appointed?
elected.
Since then, have you handled what we refer to as a mixed docket?
I have.
Can you describe what that is for the jury, please?
Means I do half criminal and half civil. So on some days I'm doing civil trials and calendars, and opposite days I'm doing criminal.
I want to focus in on criminal calendars. What types of matters are you handling on a day-to-day basis?
All types that come to the district court, which are basically felonies and gross misdemeanors.
Are there various types of hearings associated with criminal cases?
There are.
Would that include arraignments, guilty pleas, sentencings, revocations, and trials such as this?
It would.
Can you explain to the jury briefly what a guilty plea hearing is and how it unfolds?
A guilty plea hearing is when, obviously, most cases don't go to trial, they negotiate. And it's a negotiation between the defense attorney and the state. Defendant will enter into a guilty plea agreement. And then at the guilty plea hearing, we do a canvass. They review paperwork, sign off on it. And then we also engage them orally to make sure they understand everything they're doing and the rights that they're giving up in exchange for their guilty pleas.
Subsequent to a guilty plea hearing, is in the matter set for sentencing?
It is.
And what is a sentencing?
A sentencing is when they're going to be sentenced pursuant to negotiation or otherwise, whether they're going to get probation or prison. After we accept the guilty plea, we refer the matter to parole and probation. Parole and probation does what we call pre-sentence investigation report, criminal background, social background, medical background, all the history of the individual for consideration ultimately in passing sentencing.
Are there times in which a criminal defendant will appear in front of you out of custody?
Yes.
And are there other times in which they will appear in custody?
Yes.
As a result of that, are there some sentencing hearings in which people are remanded into custody from out of custody?
There are.
Are there security measures in place in the courtroom for these out of custody defendants as well as the in custody?
Well, there's security in the courtroom. We have marshals and we have corrections officers watching. I don't know per se if there's anything special.
No, that answers the question. Are there times in which you will sentence someone to probation?
Yes.
Other times in which you may send them into custody, correct?
Yes.
When you sentence someone to probation, are they still monitored by the court itself?
Not by the court, by parole and probation.
And what is parole and probation?
Parole and probation is the division responsible for supervising individuals that are on probation. They may have to report, they tell them what to do, help them find jobs, or put them in programming, get evaluations to see what kind of programming is best to serve that individual.
Are there times in which defendants who you presided over will get probation, they'll go out into the community, and then they'll essentially mess up on probation?
Yes.
And would they be brought back in front of you at that point in time?
Not right away. Sometimes P&P tends to work with them a lot of times to give them multiple chances. But at some point, when they get to a certain level, then parole and probation will put on what we call a violation report, saying that they're violating a probation. Judge, it's time for you to take a look. We think they should go do their time now.
And then that goes in front of you, and what's that proceeding called?
Revocation hearing?
At revocation hearings, do you?
This is the, okay. Some of you may not know. Okay. Let me see if I can just find the video real quick so you guys can understand what's actually happening here. Not everybody is aware of it. My apologies. Let me go ahead and download the video for the and I'm going to play the video as to what happened so you guys can have an idea of what he had done. It's day 2. Has it really been 8 months? Oh my gosh, it has.
It's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't with that history. In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court.
By the way, the guy in the suit that's pulverizing this jerk is their clerk and their personal friends. I think it's like a clerk or something like that. Oh, he went to town on Redden. I mean, he just pulverized him. Because Redden is still hurting people. Now he's going for the judge. Check on his judge.
You're good. Stop. Don't do this.
And you can hear his mama in the background and his
Is she
sister.
okay?
You see how tall that bench is? That bench is 5
Video
feet.
footage from inside a Nevada courtroom.
I
Okay,
appreciate that,
4
but I
to
think
5
it's time
feet.
that he gets a taste of
Well,
something else because
4 feet.
I just can't let
I think
that
it's 4
history-
feet.
In accordance with the laws of the state
He
of Nevada.
hurdled over 4 feet plus. What? He cleared it. He didn't even touch the computer or any of that. He sailed over 5 feet. It's 5 feet with all of that. So this is the judge that he attacked.
I want to bring you back to November 20th of 2023. On that date,
God, it's
do
already
you
been that
recall
long.
whether or not you took a guilty plea from the defendant in a prior case?
I do not specifically.
When I say the defendant, do you understand who I'm referring to?
I do.
Who?
Mr. Redden?
Do you see Mr. Redden in court?
I do. Sitting between his two attorneys over there at the table.
Would the record reflect identification of the defendant?
Okay, there's 3 gentlemen and he's.
The middle
right in
guy.
middle?
Yep.
Okay, let the record so reflect.
So as you sit here today, you don't recall taking a plea from the defendant?
I do not.
If I were to show you a document that memorializes that plea, would that maybe refresh your recollection?
Yeah.
May I approach?
Yes. Oh, so sorry. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
So I'm showing you court minutes as well as a guilty plea from November 20th of 2023.
That's the judge that
Are
he
court
beat.
minutes essentially a record of any court proceeding that happens?
They are.
Strangled her.
Do you recognize your name on there?
I do.
And do you see journal entry which suggests that you took the defendant's plea?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be on November 20th of 2023?
Correct.
Do you remember which charges he pled guilty to?
Attempt battery, substantial bodily harm.
Okay.
That I remember.
Okay. And so on this particular date, when you took the defendant's plea in the prior case, was he released from custody?
He was.
And was that pursuant to an agreement in the guilty plea?
Correct.
When he's released from custody, I would presume he goes back out into the community. Is that
He does.
And then you set a proceeding to follow the guilty plea.
Correct. The sentencing date.
And you talked a little bit about the sentencing date. You mentioned that you
Banged
received
up.
some materials
Not
to review in
serious.
order to prepare for sentence.
Right.
And in this particular case, did you receive those materials?
I did.
And what were those materials?
Well, I always have the guilty plea agreement, so I know what the negotiations were, and the pre-sentence investigation report,
If
primarily.
Primarily, you said? If sentencing was set in this case on January 3rd of this year, when would you have prepared your calendar and reviewed those materials?
Sometime in the week prior.
And
Usually
so-
closer in time, so I remember. I don't remember because it was a holiday kind of time. It was our first day back. It may have been like the Friday before.
Okay. And so you know some things in advance about the defendant when you're going in to do a sentencing.
Oh, yeah,
Do you remember reviewing a PSI in this case?
I do.
Can you explain just briefly for the jury, when you're reviewing a PSI, what are the types of things you're looking for in order to determine the appropriate sentence?
Generally, the first thing, partly because it comes first in the PSI, is the age. Because depending on whether, if it's somebody older who's never been in trouble before versus somebody super young, a lot harder to send an 18-year-old to prison, to be honest. And just kind of, so age is what I look at first.
Continue.
And then I kind of peruse, is it somebody, do they have a lot of AKAs? That kind of gives you a little heads up. A look at the family background to kind of see what we're dealing with. Is this somebody who's had problems growing up? Has there been foster care kinds of situation? What's the family situation? A lot of times we'll have, dad's in prison, mom took off, raised by grandma, all those things that you're kind of mitigating maybe on some level the behavior or trying to understand
Yes,
what you need
that's
to address and
correct,
where you need to
Campfire
go.
for Life.
Obviously, one of the big things is the criminal history.
Ah, dagnabbit. I'll give it a second. I give it a second, y'all. I apologize. Oh, getting a little brain fog, honestly. But that is what it is. Okay, come on. Let me pause it. Is it on their end? Let me refresh.
Physically off use.
3 of them, 3 or 4 of them it took.
As well as a guilty plea from November.
US.
Did you get?
Defendants who you presided over will get probation, they'll go out into the community, and then they'll essentially mess up on probation.
Yes.
There we go.
Plea from November 20th of 2023. Are court minutes essentially a record of any court proceeding that happens
They are.
in the court? Do you recognize your name on there?
I do.
And do you see journal entry which suggests that you took the defendant's plea?
Yes.
Okay. And that would be on November 20th of 2023?
Correct.
Do you remember which charges he pled guilty to?
Attempt battery, substantial bodily harm.
Okay.
That I remember.
Okay. And so on this particular date, when you took the defendant's plea in the prior case, was he released from custody?
He was.
And was that pursuant to an agreement in the guilty plea?
Correct.
When he's released from custody, I would presume he goes back out into the community.
He does.
And then you set a proceeding to follow the guilty plea.
Correct. The sentencing date.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about the sentencing date. You mentioned that you received some materials to review in order to prepare for a sentence.
Right.
And in this particular case, did you receive those materials?
I did.
And what were those materials?
Well, I always have the guilty plea agreement, so I know what the negotiations were, and the pre-sentence investigation report, primarily.
Primarily, you said? If sentencing was set in this case on January 3rd of this year, when would you have prepared your calendar and reviewed those materials?
Sometime in the week prior.
And
Usually
so-
closer in time, so I remember. I don't remember, because it was a holiday kind of time, it was our first day back. It may have been like the Friday before.
Okay. And so you know some things in advance about the defendant when you're going in to do a sentencing.
Oh, yeah,
Do you remember reviewing a PSI in this case?
I do.
Can you explain just briefly for the jury, when you're reviewing a PSI, what are the types of things you're looking for in order to determine the appropriate sentence?
Generally, the first thing, partly because it comes first in the PSI, is the age. Because depending on whether, if it's somebody older who's never been in trouble before versus somebody super young, a lot harder to send an 18-year-old to prison, to be honest. And just kind of, so age is what I look at first.
Continue.
And then I kind of peruse, is it somebody, do they have a lot of AKAs? That kind of gives you a little heads up. A look at the family background to kind of see what we're dealing with. This is somebody who's had problems growing up. Has there been foster care kinds of situation? What's the family situation? A lot of times we'll have, dad's in prison, mom took off, raised by grandma, all those things that you're kind of mitigating maybe on some level the behavior or trying to understand what you need to address and where you need to go. Obviously, one of the big things is the criminal history. I always jot down how many felonies, how many gross misdemeanors, how many misdemeanors, and then looking specifically at those, what types are they? Is this somebody who's got a drug issue that needs to be addressed? Are we looking at stolen identity of another, possessions of credit cards and stuff, which more often than not also indicates a drug problem and where these crimes are focused. And then kind of in a separate category is violence. And sex offenders, I suppose, another one that are a little bit different.
Is prior violence an important factor for you when deciding whether to put someone back out on the streets or put them in custody?
Hugely.
And in this particular case, did you note prior violence in Mr. Redden's history when reviewing his case?
I did.
As you sit here today, do you have a recollection of any
I did.
specifics?
I know that when I did the PSI, he was about 30 years old, and his first criminal conviction was in 2012, battery domestic violence. So literally, he hit 18 and it's domestic violence on his record. And throughout the remainder, until I saw him again, he averaged 1 battery domestic violence conviction a year, always. He had 3 felony convictions. He had an attempt theft that actually started out, it was pled to an attempt theft, but it started out as a robbery, which is the violent taking of property from someone else against their will, a classic crime of violence. He had 2 battery domestic violence felony convictions. You get a felony after you have so many misdemeanors, they start becoming felony. He had a battery with substantial bodily harm conviction. He had a gross misdemeanor for malicious destruction of private property, which started out as a attempt home invasion, meaning kicking in someone's home. Again, pled down to the malicious destruction. But I believe that was the one I had him on probation for. I didn't recall it, but I've since learned that he was in my department on probation for that. And I ultimately revoked him because of the case that I was seeing him on back at the time of the attack.
Okay, so that's a lot of information.
I know, sorry. I do that.
I appreciate that.
Okay, do me a favor. both
You're a
of you.
judge.
Make sure
What,
you
of course.
get his question out before you respond and vice versa. My court reporter is really good at what she does, but she's never mastered the art of taking down two people at the same time. Sorry.
She knows it.
In addition to criminal history, you also
Okay, guys, just think about this. How many times as she, as a judge, has said the same exact thing? Now she is in the witness stand, which she may never have been in before. It's a totally different ball game. That was funny. That was funny.
also
I loved it.
reviewing the PSI to determine if
Hello,
that individual has had
honey.
opportunities with probation, services, mental health treatment, and all those types.
Absolutely.
And in this case, as you perused Mr. Redden's PSI, did you see evidence to suggest that he had several opportunities with the system when it comes to services?
I did all of the crimes that we see. They're in a chart form, and then next to the chart is kind of what they got: probation, prison, violations, and whatnot. And so you can tell that he had had probation a number of times, that he had violated a number of times. According to his report, he had gone through mental health court, had multiple sanctions, and got in trouble a lot of times, but ultimately was passed through and graduated from the mental health court program, according to the PSI 2 times. He definitely had jail terms, and he had been to prison for on 1 term.
And so you had mentioned a moment ago, you have since realized that you previously revoked his probation.
Correct.
I want the record to be clear about that. When you're reviewing his PSI, preparing to sentence him on the incident, you don't recall that information.
No, no clue.
Fair to say there are hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal defendants who've come in front of you over the years.
Yes.
And you have since learned that you had previously revoked his probation and sent him to jail.
Correct. And I don't know if I sent him to jail. I don't know if he was in custody and he stipulated that he violated his probation. I mean, he may have been agreeable to it. I don't know any of the facts of that. I just know that I somehow ruled you're revoked.
Understood. I want to now move forward to January 3rd of this year. So on that date, you proceed into court for your criminal calendar. Do you remember how many matters you had on that day?
I don't.
Were there a mix of both in custody and out of custody defendants?
Yes.
At some point in time, did Mr. Redden, was his case called?
It was.
If you can summarize for the jury what happened when his case was called initially.
I mean, nothing. It was just the typical. He was in on a bench warrant return as well because after we let him out, he didn't show up. So Mr. Almasi, his attorney, had put him on for a bench warrant return, meaning come into court and ask not to quash the warrant, not to arrest him on it. And so
everyone understands he was out of custody on the day of his sentence.
He was.
He had a bench warrant in that case, but he walked in from the street.
Correct.
When
he had failed to appear at the prior sentencing date.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So there was a prior sentencing date. He doesn't show up for that. A bench warrant is generated, and then he comes in out of custody at the second sentence.
Right.
Explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how it is that the sentencing starts to proceed. Who talks first, and how does that go?
The state always has the right to argue first. In a lot of negotiations, they'll negotiate away the right to argue for any particular sentence. They might agree to probation. They might make no recommendation. There's a number of things they could stipulate to a sentence per the deal. In this case, because the defendant failed to appear, any negotiation previously offered by the state is off the table, and the state, what we call, regains the right to argue. So even if they were agreeing to some other sentence previous, because he failed to appear, they have the right to argue for the sentence. So
in this case, that occurred, and then I would presume the deputy district attorney that was in court that day would argue the sentence.
He did.
And he would recommend whatever sentence he deemed appropriate.
He did.
Ultimately, the decision would have been up to him.
It was.
After the district attorney argues for their sentence, what happens next?
Then I turn to the defendant, Mr. Redden. He goes next. Do you have anything to say to the court before I pronounce sentence? And he was very calm and articulate and basically he's been doing great. He's at a better place than he ever was before. And, you know, I pointed out your violent history, your failure to appear. And I don't remember whether mental illness came up, but I had said that he had been through mental health court. In his PSI, he had claimed that mental illness wasn't an issue for him. So it's kind of hard to, I didn't know how to reconcile it. But anyway, he had talked about he was going to have a job with the Teamsters and he was going to do all this stuff. Meanwhile, he had no employment history whatsoever, that at least according to the PSI, there was no employment history. So I don't know where he was going, but anyway, he was calm. And he said,
Go ahead.
I think you should give me probation. He said, and we did have, we talked about his criminal history, and it's just so much violence. And
Let me ask you some very specific
Sure.
questions. When Mr. Redden was speaking in court, did you observe any signs of impairment?
No.
Did you observe any signs of mental distress or disease or hallucinations or anything of that nature?
Absolutely not.
Had you observed something to that effect, would it have been concerning to you?
Of course.
Are there times in which the court needs to jump in and say, hey, it's not appropriate to proceed today?
Absolutely.
Here, did you see anything that caused you concern while Mr. Redden spoke?
Not at all.
After Mr. Redden spoke, who spoke next?
Mr. Almasi,
And who was that?
his attorney, Caesar.
And was Mr. Almasi permitted to make a full argument to the court and ask for leniency and whatever he wanted?
He was.
And did he do so?
He did.
Now, in a moment, I want to play some video for you. Judge, with the court's permission, we've previously stipulated 58. May I publish?
You may.
They're going to play it.
No.
This ought to be good. Oh, getting a headache. Okay, for those who are asking, I live in Central Texas, in the #1 allergy testing capital in the world. Meaning, if you've got allergies, you don't want to live here. I lived here for almost 20 years before I started having allergies. Saying.
Before we get there, Judge, up until that point, district attorney speaks.
She's got
Mr. Redden
gorgeous
speaks,
hair.
Defense attorney speaks. Was everything proceeding as you expect a sentencing proceeding?
Yes.
Were there any signs at all that this was going to get out of control or violent?
No,
Nope.
it was actually completely contrary because he was, like I said, calm and articulate. And he said, you know, this is what I'm doing. But at the same time, he said, but Judge, I understand you got to do what you think is right. And I understand that. So it was better than I would normally hope, I guess.
Court's permission. 58.
That's what you get for thinking.
3697.
Saying. Play.
This is time set for entry of judge in position of sentence or legal cause or reason why judge should not be pronounced against you at this time.
No, Judge.
The virtue be 3697.
Is that your courtroom on January 3rd of 2024?
It is.
And is that your current courtroom?
It is.
As you look around this courtroom, is it set up a little bit differently than yours?
It is.
The folks that are on the right-hand side of the screen, do you know who they are?
Yeah.
Who are
The
they?
deputy DAs, Joey Scarborough and Richard Scow.
Thank you, guys.
Hell no.
Picture also on your screen.
It is.
Okay.
You can see that on your screen there, Judge?
I can.
The folks on the right, who are they?
The district attorneys, Richard Scow and Joey Scarborough.
And on the left,
Caesar Almasi.
is that the gentleman in the blue suit?
It is.
Who's that taller guy standing in the center of the room?
Shane Brandon, my marshal.
And is Shane Brandon, similar to Marshall Black, responsible for courtroom security?
He is.
Counsel, can I have you approach for a moment?
Judge, before we move on with the video, I want to follow up on a question I asked earlier. You had mentioned PSI. What does that actually mean?
Pre-sentence investigation report.
And is that, as you described, several pages long, and it would give not only criminal history of the individual, but where they're from, their childhood, their background, their marital status, their health, and various other things.
Yes.
Essentially, it's a packet that is supposed to give you everything you need to sentence an individual.
Correct.
These individuals down here on the left, you can see at least one of them. Who are these folks?
Those are the other inmates.
And so they are in your courtroom, they're sitting where our jury is sitting today.
Correct.
And those are in custody defendants, is that right?
Right.
When a defendant shows up out of custody, do they sit back in the gallery area here?
They do.
And as you mentioned before, Mr. Redden was out of custody.
He was.
I'm going to resume the video.
They are. His ankles definitely are shackled, y'all. No doubt about it.
All right. This is time set for entry of judgment, position of sentence, or legal cause or reason why judgment should not be pronounced against you at this time.
No, Judge.
By virtue of you pleaded guilty, I hereby judge you guilty of attempt battery or substantial bodily harm.
I love this. It's
My
bad
notes
for
indicate
her,
the
but
state
it's
retain the
good
right to
viewing.
argue to the bench warrant. Is that correct? Yeah.
That is correct, Judge.
All right. State.
Based on the criminal history, Judge, this is the PSI. I'm going to see all this. I don't need to rehash everything. My concerns are there are crimes of violence.
Yep.
In the PSI, 3 felonies, 1 probation revoked. But you see on page 5, there are many probation violations or remands on probation following discharge for. But I'm concerned based on the nature of the criminal history, home invasions, batteries, battery domestic violence, assault that ended up in this case, the collection of attempt battery substantial. I think felony is appropriate, and I think a prison term would be
Good
appropriate.
one. Good one,
Is
dear.
there any restitution or victim impact?
No, Judge, not really today. So, but I do think the prison is appropriate. I asked the court to impose 1948 on this case based on the criminal history and the facts of this case.
Okay.
Judge, could you hear that okay?
Uh-huh.
When the deputy district attorney asked for 19 to 48, just describe what that means.
The attempt battery or substantial bodily harm that he was charged with could be treated either as a felony, where you could get 1 to 4 years in prison, or it could be treated as a gross misdemeanor. You get up to 364 days in the Clark County Detention Center. He was asking that it be treated as a felony, the 1 to 4, and he was asking for the maximum sentence under that felony, 19 to 48. It's 19 months to 48 months. Here in Nevada, you get a max and a minimum sentence. So you get the 48 months or the 4 years. The minimum is supposed to be a truth in sentencing to let you know how much you have to serve before you are eligible for parole. And that would be the 19 to 48. The minimum can't exceed 40% of the maximum. So truly the maximum minimum and the maximum in this case was 19 to 48 months.
Mr. Redden, is there anything you want to say on your own behalf before I pronounce sentence?
So basically, I would like to tell the courts and everyone here, like, based on my criminal history, like, I feel that
She knows her shit.
I shouldn't be like sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history?
Huh?
Have you looked at your criminal history?
I actually just, I looked at it. And
When you lived at it?
I just looked at it, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know.
3 felonies, gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs. Got a lot going on, sir.
Yeah, I just figured like.
Battery on a protected person, robberies.
Look at him, look at her.
Attempted
She's
home
like,
invasion.
mhm.
Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I whooped her butt.
I just figure like I'm in a better place in my mind, my mental health,
No, you
I have a
ain't.
support system.
Ah.
I just got hired as a teamster for, a union, making $2 an hour. And like the reason behind every single domestic violence, I've been dealing with mental health, and I didn't know that I was dealing with mental health. And they put me in mental health court, and I still didn't know that I had a mental health problem until it was August 2022 when I realized I had a problem with this. And like having a dictionary and like understanding myself, getting to know myself a little better, and applying it to my personality, and having an epiphany at that moment in those instances, and just like trying to learn from my mistakes, you know. And I feel like I shouldn't be sent to prison, but if it's appropriate for you, then you have to do what you have to do. But I figure that, if I'm in a better place in my life, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not out there committing crimes now, and I feel like I should be given a shot because I'm in a better place than I was then, so, but that's, I'm a person who never stops trying to do the right thing, no matter how hard it is. And I just, and I'm trying, and I never give up trying to do the right thing. I know I'm not a rebellious person. I don't want to be standing there. I want you to have to, sit up there and waste your time as well, but the criteria of me saying this is that I'm a person that never stops trying to do the right things, even if it's hard. And I did the best I could. I have mental problems, I guess.
Thank you.
Judge, has contained a pre-sentence investigation report, my client was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And in speaking with him, it certainly seems that he's following the pattern. This court has seen so many times, so self-medication.
I bet he keeps his mouth shut this time around.
He did. He does have to apply for discharge from probation. So he can do probation. He can be successful when supervised. It is true that he did get dishonorable discharge. He was revoked on a gross misdemeanor. That he was supervised.
That was I'm hearing a bunch of BS if I've ever heard it before. Look.
His foster mother, who is present as a show support, named Karen Springer, has provided him a place to live, which is listed on the PSI. His current address is 8 Rose Circle, Apartment A in North Las Vegas. And she very graciously has allowed him to stay there rent-free until he gets on his feet. Now, he is now part of Union 631 with Teamsters and is hoping to work his way through that program so he can maintain work. He's also reached out.
Up until this point, Your Honor, you have suggested a couple times that you're not buying the argument for probation. Is that fair?
Fair.
Did you just now observe Mr. Redden move his body position a bit?
Yes.
Did you notice that back then?
No.
Shannon West for any job prospects that are available.
You seeing that now?
I am.
Is it common for a judge and her marshal to have a bit of an unspoken language that goes on when you're sentencing?
Yes.
You work closely with your marshal?
Very.
And those cues that you've given in court, do they have a bit of a purpose?
They do.
What is that?
So he can get ready for a remand.
And a remand means put cuffs on.
Taking somebody out of custody and putting them in custody.
Members in the
Through that. Finally, Judge, it's not just his mental health.
They're going to blame her bailiff for not protecting
He also
her.
has a history of IE.
I see where this is going.
His education. And at 30 years old, he does not have a high
I
school
mean,
degree.
he did it, but they're
So
going
we
to,
spoke about that
the
as
defense,
well.
I can
And
see them.
it's the time that he did that. I think the court can trust that he is going to perform well
They're
on
going to throw
probation.
all kind of crap at the wall.
He's worth this risk. The court wants the 1948 suggested by the VA. I would have no issue with that, but to suspend it rather than just send him to prison for a length of time. I think it makes no sense given the circumstances and his ability to do probation successfully that you give this opportunity.
I appreciate that, but I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because I just can't have it straight. The courts with the laws of state that.
Wow.
Before we let that play, Judge, I want you to do your best to walk us through what happens next from your end.
That was just, they were the boom.
I remember him coming at me and really didn't think that he would ever make contact. And then I just remember it was like a crash sound. I just remember smashing into the wall. I went down, my glasses went up. I smashed into the wall. He was on me. And then I was being pulled down. I was being hit and I don't know where and by what. I had closed my eyes. I was trying to protect my face and my head. He had me by the hair and I was still getting hit in the head. In the meantime, I saw my law clerk who was sitting next to me,
Law clerk.
who had dove almost in front of me as Mr. Redden came at me. And he was on top trying to pry the defendant off me. By this point, I had pulled down, I was kind of laying down like in the back of the bench. I had gone my head from this side to this side. And I just remember saying, help, help, somebody get him off. I mean, in my head, I was completely defenseless. He was so determined and so violent and so, it was scary. I didn't think I was going to get out of there.
Give you a moment. I want to play a little more video. Back up a little bit.
Even for a judge, this is a judge's worst nightmare. That and alleged shooter. The only thing worse. He never just words come out of that guy's mouth. Watch here. They were beating his butt. He wasn't letting go of it. Oh, she's saying, get off me.
Don't do this.
Oh, baby.
Is she okay?
No reaction on him. None. He's like,
Hey,
I did that.
Can you do your best to describe the level of force he used when you were under the bench and we can't see in the video?
The level of force he used the entire time was superhuman. I don't know. From the time he came through the air and smashed into me, he knocked me literally almost through the wall, out of my chair. He knocked me so hard, he knocked me out of my shoes. You know, when you see a car accident and people get hit so hard by a car, their shoes come off. I mean, that's how hard he hit me. And when I was down there, it didn't get less.
We saw there a couple of individuals jump in, one of them being your law clerk.
Yes.
While, if you remember, if you know, while your law clerk was trying to save you, was Mr. Redden stopped?
He was not.
Can you describe that? What was going on physically and how?
Only by feel. Because
Do your best.
I was down in the ground and I could just feel someone going at me who was Mr. Redden, because that's where he was. And I could feel someone trying to pull him off and leave her alone. And you know, this like they're fighting over me. I mean, Michael's trying to pull him off and he's not letting go.
Do you know, based on memory, where his hands were?
I do not.
Do you remember being struck or hitting your head while you were down behind the bench there?
Yes.
Do you remember what struck you?
I do not.
What do you remember what side of your head was?
Left at that point.
Did Mr. Redden continue to attack you while Mr. Lasso was pulling you?
He did.
At some point, Mr. Lasso and the others are successful in getting him physically off you. So
3 of them. 3 or 4 of them it took to get him off me.
where did you go or what did you do once they were able to?
As soon as I was clear enough, I literally rolled onto my bench in fetal position.
I would presume that this was extremely traumatic for you, but I have to ask, do you know if you went unconscious during the attack?
I don't know.
What is the next thing you remember after rolling into the fetal position under the bench?
I remember thinking, why is it taking so long? I mean, there was chaos in the courtroom, there was screaming, the alarms were going off, and there was still a struggle. Again, I couldn't see it. Partly my eyes were closed and partly it was out of my sight. And so I was just laying there and waiting. And then the next thing I remember is Jory coming up, is she okay? And Michael came up earlier, Michael Lasso, my law clerk, and kind of stood by me, kind of, are you okay? And also, at least the feeling I got was that he was the buffer in case they lost control of the defendant again, because he was still very close.
While the attack was actually going on, what was going through your head?
I'm not going to get out of here. And it's a weird thing, because I know that there's video and there's a part of me going, I'll be dead. But I have 3 kids. They're going to watch. And that's what they're going to see. That's what was making me so mad. Not what he was doing to me, but what he was doing to my family.
Welcome.
So.
Yes, he
alarms are going
does.
off, lots of physical chaos going on. Did you look around? Eventually were you able to get up and look around the courtroom?
Yeah.
What do you recall seeing then?
Well, behind the bench, there was blood everywhere.
Where did that come from, if you know?
Shane, my marshal.
Did you look at Shane?
I did.
What did you see?
His forehead was literally sliced open and the skin had been just flapping as he was trying to protect me, even though he was hurt, but he was getting blood all over the bench. There was clumps of my hair on the floor. The calendar papers were all covered in blood.
Eventually is, what I'll call the scene, is it all secured and Mr. Redden taken away?
Yes.
I'll resume the video here for a moment. Let me turn that down just a little bit.
The alarm that you are hearing is okay. The alarm, that beeping you're hearing, is to notify the rest of the courthouse that they have this situation going on.
Stay down, stay on the ground. Please God, please God, please God. We're asking you to come oh shit! Yeah. Fucking ass. Question. Yeah, go ahead. Hey, hey, stop! Hardcore! Stop! Hardcore! Super! Struggle! Hardcore! Hardcore! Hey, my man! Calm down. Hey, you come here. I'll take care of it. That's my guy. Come around. You want it? That's my guy. Come around.
They just said officer down.
Is medical coming? Yeah, medical. Yeah, we need medical. What, you okay? This fucking ass out of here. Huh? Hold it. What happened? Are you okay? Come here. Come here. He's laughing. Come here.
They're still trying to subdue him. This guy right here in the black that just turned around, this one right here, this is the guy whose head literally was like gashed. It was bad. And he had a dislocated shoulder, rotator cuff, something.
Judge, did you see yourself finally getting up there?
I did.
I believe previously you said you don't know if you went unconscious or not.
Correct.
Do you remember getting up and trying to walk where there's no exit?
Well, I remember because I've seen the video. I mean,
You have no independent recollection of trying to get out of the courtroom by going over to the other side of the bench?
Nope.
No.
You hit her head, bro.
Yeah.
She hit her head. She hit her head hard.
Oh, she's out of it.
What are you looking for?
Shoe.
I watched it live. I watched this stuff live. I was freaking out.
Once you are cleared from the courtroom, can I presume that there was an investigation that ensued?
Yes.
Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detectives come down and document the scene.
I don't know who documented the scene. By then we were in the back. AMR came and medical was clearing everybody and taking Shane out and stuff.
Eventually, you give a recorded statement like any witness to a crime or victim of a crime.
I did.
And can you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the injuries you sustained, if any?
Obviously, I hit my head. I did. My family didn't want me driving, so my daughter drove me home, and then they insisted that I go to the hospital and get a scan to make sure I woke up in the morning because it looked pretty scary. The scan was okay, but obviously I had a headache for a few days. The spots where he pulled out my hair, you know how when you get your hair pulled out, it's sore for a while. That was sore for a few days. My arm, my back, everything was stiff, like, you get jostled around. The next day, the worst part for me, the next day was my neck. I don't know what it was. I don't know. All I know is I literally, during the day, was holding my head up, like, with two hands because my neck was so
You had
sore and so
whiplash,
tired.
honey.
It just hurt. My tailbone, that hurt for weeks. If you ever bruise your tailbone, that just doesn't go away right away. And I was walking older than my age for a while. I didn't get back on the treadmill for 2 or 3 weeks. And when I say back on the treadmill, I walk on it. It's nothing. But I couldn't even walk on the treadmill for a couple of weeks. And then it was several months before I could lay on my left arm. I couldn't sleep on it.
What type of injury did you have on your left arm?
That's what took, I think, the bulk of the initial hit. Again, I don't know what it was that hit me there, but I still have, it's been how long now, and there's a round, it's not horribly disfiguring, but it's a definite, you can still see a round, raised, bruised, fleshy, something not like the rest of it, marking where he made contact with me that day. But it took me months before I could sleep on my left side again.
In the days following the attack, were you photographed, and did you and your family members take photos of your injuries as they progressed?
We did.
Were there several times in the following days where you lost large clumps of hair?
Yes.
I have to ask for the record, ma'am, how old are you?
63 now.
And you would have been 62 at the time of the
I
incident?
was.
Asshole. Yeah, I said it. I
Thank you
don't
very
care.
much. Asshole.
Okay, Cross.
Good
Careful.
afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Arnold.
She's like,
Your
yeah,
Honor,
yeah.
isn't it true that you didn't have any bruises as a result of this attack?
No.
And
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was your answer?
No.
And isn't it true, Your Honor, that you didn't suffer any bleeding as a result of this attack?
That's true.
And isn't it true that
Not everyone does bruise, truthfully. And sometimes you can't see it in your hairline like you would on your face, but I'd be all black
you had
and
no
blue.
broken bones as a result of this attack?
That's also true.
And
Post-traumatic
in regards
stress
to your
disorder from
neck,
hell.
you didn't have any bruising on your neck. Is that true?
True.
Isn't it true that you didn't know how many times, if any, that Mr. Redden hit you with a fist?
True.
In fact, you don't know for sure if Mr. Redden hit you with a fist or if you were kneed or anything like that.
True. After the obvious initial.
Correct. And let's make that clear for the record. So when you say after the obvious initial, I'm not talking about the leap, but when you're actually on the floor, you don't know if you were being struck by Mr. Redden with his feet, his fists, or anything like that.
Correct. Just that I'm being hit.
Just that you were being hit. And were you covered up? Was your face covered up at the time?
I'm going to assume so. I mean,
prior to him jumping over the bench, you didn't see him with anything in his hand?
No.
And you didn't see during the attack him having anything in his hand?
No.
You're asking it in the negative, the last two questions, Mr. Arnold, and I'm afraid that it'll come across in the transcript as a double negative. Could you re-ask those questions? I just want to make sure you're getting the meaning that you want.
Yes, Your Honor. So isn't it true that you didn't see anything in his hand?
Yes.
And isn't it true that during the attack, when you're on the floor, you didn't see anything in his hand that he was attacking you with?
Also true.
I'm going to shift gears here and talk about the PSI. In regards to the PSI, you reviewed it.
I did.
And did you was there a section that you recall in regards to his mental illness?
Yes.
And you were aware that he had suffered from, he had a previous mental illness history, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall, was it paranoia and schizophrenia?
I remember schizophrenia.
It's
I don't
gonna go
remember
to
what
the
else.
victims, but
Do
shit,
you have
that
any
sucks.
concerns going into the
Zach,
actual
appreciate you so much,
sentencing
man. You
hearing
know that, right?
about his
You do.
competency?
No.
Did you make any inquiries to Mr.
He's an asshole.
Amalfi, his defense attorney,
Actually, a
in regards
whole lot worse,
to
y'all.
his
Whole lot worse.
competency prior to proceeding with sentencing?
I did not. If I recall, the mental health history was fairly long ago about his diagnosis of schizophrenia, and that he had gotten some treatment and that he was not on medication.
She
He
did
had graduated from
good.
mental health court, and according to him, he didn't feel like his mental health was causing him any issues. That was kind of the summary of the mental health issues as I understood them from his PSI.
Right.
And then coupling that, normally it would be, the defense attorney would be the one to bring it to my attention that there's a competency issue if it wasn't obvious.
Right.
And then that coupled with his appearance in court didn't give me any cause for pause.
Did you note, or was it brought to your attention through your review of the PSI, that on your case, prior to it proceeding to district court, that he was found to be incompetent?
I don't recall he was found to be incompetent. I recall he was referred to competency court, but I don't recall the findings.
Okay. And do you know, after he was referred to competency court, how long did the case languish prior to you receiving a guilty plea in the case?
I don't know.
And again, you weren't aware or made aware by anyone that he was supposed to be on medication at the time of his sentencing?
No
was not.
excuse.
Just check my notes real quick.
This guy is digging deep to try to salvage this, but y'all, he spoke clearly. And if he's off his psych meds, that's still not her problem. It's his. He got off his psych meds. So guess what? You still gonna go to jail, boo boo, for a while. Yeah, you boo boo. Y'all, it's bad. Thank
Was he
you,
saying
Miss Ronnie,
anything
for
to you
what
that you recall when he was on top
doing
of you?
my request. Thank
I
you,
don't
Miss
recall.
Ronnie.
Do you recall if you heard any statements that he said that he was trying to kill you?
I don't recall.
Oh, he
Do
said
you
a lot
recall
of
anything
things.
that was being said to you by Mr. Redden?
I do not. It was literally chaos.
Probably couldn't hear it, but you go back and slow that
And
down.
again,
You hear
all the
every
blows
cuss word
that
in the book.
you said that you felt to your head, you don't know who gave those blows, number one. Is that correct?
I mean,
You're assuming that it was Mr.
Michael
Redden.
Jury and Richard literally were pulling him off me, saving my life.
Okay.
But for them, I'm not here. But no, I guess theoretically, my law clerk could have punched me in the head.
Well, you said that you experienced blows to your head. Is that correct? And so again, there's a huge scuffle and they're trying to get him off of you.
True.
And so you don't know what part of anyone's body that.
All right, let's just admit it. That didn't happen.
Are you telling me that you're accusing her legal clerk and the deputies and all of those people who were trying to save her from this jackass, that they're the ones that caused her to be injured? Hell no. We're going there. We are going code red. In 3. If you don't like flashy things, turn away. In 3, 2, 1. I'm freaking code red. That is bullshit. Dude, look at her face. She's like,
Actually landed
you
on
ain't
your
gonna
hand
like me
that
when you
could have
come
caused
before me in
injury.
court next time, sir.
Eventually, but initially he was the only one near there.
Right.
Could have, yes.
And do you recall also that when you gave your voluntary statement, that you stated that you were only struck in the head once?
No.
I don't recall. If I said that, I do.
Okay. And
I don't think I've ever said there was the initial and then there was a second.
She was struck multiple times. Oh.
Okay. I'm going to approach Ms. Payson and approach to refresh your recollection.
Sure. Oh, I did it again. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Just where I have it highlighted.
We have started?
Yeah. Just read in between that.
You want me to read it to you?
No, just read it and refresh your recollection. You know the drill. And I'll ask questions.
Can I keep that?
Yeah. if you want.
There you go.
This is what this guy is going to be
So
hearing
based
a
upon
whole
your review
hell
of
of
the
a lot
voluntary
of.
statement, do you recall how you were hit?
Same thing. I don't know if it was head or elbow, head, hand. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
And you don't
I was
know,
hit, but I don't know with what.
right? And you don't know how many times you were
I
hit?
don't.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Redirect.
I'll be brief, Judge. You gave a voluntary statement to police that was recorded, right?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, you testified at a prior court.
Yes.
And throughout that, you've been consistent that you don't remember how many times you were hit.
Yes.
In fact, as you sit here today, you can't tell the jury if you were knocked out.
No.
Mr. Arnold,
I think you might have a double negative as well. Could you re-ask that question?
do you know if you were knocked out?
No. I mean, no.
May I approach?
Yes.
There was a question or a line of questioning about
A judge with an
whether you
English
sustained
degree.
bruising. Do you remember
Love
that line
it.
of questioning?
Yes.
Showing you now 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. Are those documentation of your bruising?
Yes.
After the incident?
Oh,
These
so
will be
she did
available to
have
the jury. These are
bruising,
already
you
admitted,
jerk.
so these will be available to the jury. I'm not going to put them up on the board. When you described this attack initially,
So she did bruise.
I asked you about the level of force that was used. And I want you to do your best to describe the level of force used and why it is you don't remember how many times you were hit.
I was hit so hard
Objection, Your Honor.
between
Compound.
the defendant's body and behind my bench. It's a marble wall. And so, like I said, I was hit so hard that I literally smashed into it. And then I was at best dazed. And I was pulled down behind me. And he
grabbed your hair on the left
continued
side and jerked you the other way.
going after me so forcefully and so violently that literally 3 or 4 healthy, strong young men couldn't get him off of me. It was so strong. They saved my life. I tell them that all the time. You guys saved my life.
As that was happening,
He's like, yeah, right, bitch.
a hand on your neck.
I remember being held. No, not clearly. No.
Fair enough. You're doing your best to recall the events.
But they saw it.
Is that
You're
right?
going to
Yes.
hear from them.
I do know I lost hair, a lot of hair from that side.
She has a lot of hair. I love her hair,
Yes,
man.
just real quick. And, Your Honor, in regards
Wish
to
I had her curls.
the bruising, the pictures that you were just shown, those were pictures in regards to bruising on your shoulder, your arms, and your legs and tailbone. Is that correct?
I don't have a picture of my tailbone, but
your back area.
my lower hip, my
Right.
shoulder, and my upper arm. Yeah.
Okay. And there was no bruising to the face, and there was no bruising to your neck. You have to say
As there was no bruising, and she's saying no.
But we have to get it verbally and I'll
Oh,
start
she's
it over
forgetting.
again.
There was
Oh.
no bruising to my neck
There was no bruising
that I'm aware of, yeah.
to your neck and there was no bruising to your face.
She forgets.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's all right.
all
I
right.
just want to make sure.
She forgets. It's hard being on the other side, y'all. It's hard. I've been there multiple times. No,
The transcript.
I
reads
wasn't
the
in
way that
trouble.
You guys wanted to read, that's all.
Right. All right, no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, you may step down.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I know,
Next
right?
witness, your own state calls Michael Lasso. May I approach
One,
your Sure.
2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, come on, guys, really? Jeez. Yeah, I'm going to count every single punch as you're hitting me. Give me a break. Oh, the hero. Here I come to save the day. I love this dude. Oh, man, I only got 15 more minutes, y'all.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you currently employed?
I'm sorry.
How are you currently employed?
Right now I'm a law clerk, so I'm law clerk for the Honorable Judge Mary Kay Holthus.
And did you just see Ms. Holthus leave the courtroom?
I did.
How long have you been her law clerk?
I've been a law clerk basically a year now, maybe a year and 1 month. So August 2023 is when I first took the job, and right now I'm scheduled to be there till August 2025.
You've known her much longer than
Yes.
a little over a year, correct?
I've known her a long time. She's really a family friend. I kind of know her children very well. Almost grew up together. So yeah, I've known her a long time. That's how I got lucky enough to kind of be able to work with her. And since working with her, I see her in a whole new light now. A lot of respect for her.
How long have you known her?
Man, probably since I was 8 years old. So maybe 11 years, just about.
How
Years old?
Yeah.
11? I'm just, are you 19 years old?
Oh, no, wait a minute. Oh, my God. I'm like, wait. I'm actually not good at math. That's why I'm a law clerk. So it's really been that long because I'm 27 now. So that's 21 years. Wow. Or no.
19.
Oh, no. It's a long time.
Okay, so you've known her for 19 years.
Yeah.
And that's how you became her law clerk?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how I became a law clerk. I guess I got a good recommendation, so I was able to get the job.
What does a law clerk do?
Law clerk basically kind of just does whatever the judge needs. I mean, I do a lot of briefing for her. I'm almost the middleman in between the judge and anyone else, like attorneys. So anyone that wants to contact the judge, anyone that wants to speak with her, anyone that files a motion, anything like that, I'm the middleman in between. So I'm looking at all the motions. I'm speaking to all the attorneys. I'm kind of coordinating everything. I brief all the motions for the judge, kind of give her a heads up. And sometimes it's as simple as just giving her a cup of coffee.
Do you also accompany her to her calendars?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every calendar, I sit directly next to the judge, kind of on the left side of her. And we have a split docket, so we have criminal and civil. So I'm just kind of on that left side, almost where this monitor is, and I'll kind of be right here, and the judge will be right there. She has her own monitors, and I have kind of my own computer. And I'm directly next to the judge for every calendar.
And when the calendar is occurring, what are you doing while you're seated next to her?
It depends. I'm usually checking my emails. I'll also keep going along with whatever matter is up. So, maybe if it's a criminal matter, I kind of pull up that entire file. If there's anything the judge quickly needs printed, or if maybe it's a police report or anything like that, I kind of right there. I have a printer there. I can print anything she needs. Or sometimes I need to run in the back, get her something that she needs, maybe make a copy. Basically anything at all, just to make sure the calendar runs smooth.
Okay. And what days does she hear her criminal calendar?
She hears a criminal calendar on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then Tuesdays are civil.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the courtroom that she presides in is set up very differently from the courtroom we're currently in?
Oh, absolutely. Much different. This is a much bigger courtroom, but the defense and plaintiff desks are much further away. I would say these are a lot closer than the ones that are in her courtroom.
Okay. I'm going to show you some photographs of your courtroom.
Sure.
So that you can help explain the layout for us. I'm showing you on the overhead what's been admitted as states 2. Could I get it flipped over, please?
Hey, Zach, just subscribed.
Your Honor, I can't see yet. Sorry. I couldn't see the monitor. It was taking a minute to turn on.
You can pull up the lamps. Yeah, pull up the lamps, just a little bit.
I might turn them off. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, Mr. Lasso, this is State's Exhibit 2 for the record. These tables right here that we see
Who typically stands right there?
So usually the
During a
defense.
counter.
Yeah, usually the defense stays there, and then on the other side, that opposite desk is where the DA or the state, was representing the state that day. Maybe it's an AG, will be sitting over there.
And then,
You know, we do have a mouse there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, where did the defense sit?
So defense would be right here, typically like right here. Maybe the attorney would be next to him, and then on the other side here, kind of where that mouse is, that other desk is where the state would be.
okay. And then is there also an area where the court staff, such as a court clerk and a court reporter, sit?
Yeah, it would be. I don't know what's going on here. That would be like right here. So this is where our court clerks are. This is where our court recorder would be, kind of like right here. That's our monitor. That's where the judge is. And then on that right side, that monitor is my monitor right there. And then to the right of that is actually where that little monitor is, the witness stand. So usually during criminal calendar, we have a correctional officer that would sit there.
And was there a correctional officer sitting there on January 3rd of 2024?
Yes, there was.
What is the difference between a court clerk and a law clerk?
There's a big difference. The law clerk is usually has a legal degree, so we're briefing actually the law that's involved in the motion. So we're looking at the case law, making sure it's still good, reliable. Kind of briefing those, telling judge, giving her recommendations as to what she should do, what she shouldn't do. Whereas the court clerk is also a middleman in between the judge, but at the same time they just kind of handle just different areas, not really involved in any legal advising or aspect of it. I would say more just kind of coordination, handling minutes, the court minutes, things like that. So just kind of a little different.
Okay. And then the court recorder, you said you guys have a recorder in that department.
Yeah, and that one right there. So this one, that monitor, you kind of see it's light. That would be for the court clerk, and then to the left side would be the court recorder.
Okay. And with regards to that courtroom, is there actually an entrance behind that tile wall that we can see?
Yes. So that's where the judge and me, that's where we usually enter, along with the entire court staff, really. We all kind of enter in through that door. Her chambers would be right behind there. So we kind of come in through this right side way. Then I take my seat right there. Judge will sit right there. And then the rest of the court staff will take their place.
And then moving on to States 3. Oops, let me take this one off. What are we looking at here?
So this is kind of just a seating area. Usually people who are supporting the defense or the defendant would be sitting in this back area, but it really could be anyone. So that desk right here is the defense desk, kind of just the opposite angle, or I'm sorry, the state's desk. I'm sorry. So this would be usually anyone that on behalf of the state sits right here. And this would be, like I said, where the DA or the state would be. And then that opposite side is where the defense is. So this would be where any defendant would be, their attorney. Usually it's a PD. And then, like I said, this is usually where family members will sit, supporters, friends, anything like that.
And do you see another exit in this photograph?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that would be right here in this photograph. This is an exit also to that chamber hallway where there's a lot of different chambers and offices, things like that.
So staff and sometimes attorneys might use that?
Oh, absolutely. There's a copier machine. So sometimes when I have to run and go make copies, I'll kind of run to that backside. And occasionally I'll come through that door, but usually not. But right behind there's like a big copy machine and jury rooms for deliberation.
But generally speaking, the public would not use that?
No.
And then showing you.
I think you got another double negative there. Does the public use those doors?
Not that specific one, no. And the one behind the judge, no, never.
Okay.
Showing you States 4 on the overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, does this appear to be a photograph taken from the area where the juror box was in the previous photograph?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is that angle, kind of where that door would be. And, so this is where like the jury would sit. This is where like occasionally witnesses will come up and maybe a victim statement would be given or attorneys will go up there and make an argument. This is where the state would be. And that was kind of where that previous photo was taken, would be back here for friends and family. And then this door is kind of where a holding cell is. And then also where defendants during our criminal calendars, that's where they will walk those defendants through that door. And then to the right side is where a recorder would sit. And then this is the court clerk here.
Okay. And when you say defendants, do you mean in custody defendants?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then showing you States 5. What is this?
So this is kind of the angle from the recorder and our court clerk. So this was kind of that long desk here, and this is facing the jury box. So kind of where that last picture was taken would be right here, and then this is that door that leads to the copier. So then you can kind of go through there, but typically there wouldn't be public that'd be going through there. Occasionally attorneys do, but yeah, this is just kind of that opposite angle. And then to the right side here would be like the defense table where usually PDs sit or defendants that are out of custody.
Showing you States 6. What are we looking at here?
This is the view from the court clerk's angle here. So this is where the judge would sit. This is my monitor right here. Literally right where that picture is being taken would be exactly like the angle from the court clerk. And then this right here would be the witness stand. It's kind of like right here. Then we have a TV there, and that's that same door, obviously the jury box. And then when we have criminal calendars, instead of a jury there would be the in-custody defendants would all be kind of taking up that area.
Okay. If you could look right here for me, where my finger is.
Yeah.
Is that a essentially like a wall between where the judge sits and the court clerk?
Yes, it's a full wall. There's no kind of opening that you can go through there. Kind of the only access point to that chair that you're saying where the judge would sit is through that right side. So you have to go through that right side. It's kind of like maybe 2 steps that you go around and yeah, right there. It's got 2 steps you would go around. And that's the only way to get over there. Unless you were to hop over this little wall there, you can't really get to that side of there's no access to it essentially.
Okay, so this would be the door that you'd walk through to get to the
Yeah, it kind
area
of
where you
swings
would
around. Yeah.
Okay. Showing you state 7.
And then from right here, this is the view from the judge, kind of where the judge sits. That's a microphone right here. And there's a little sign too that will say like, always recording. That's right there. And this is her view. That right there, that monitor would again be where an out of custody defendant would be, along with a PD or whoever their attorney would be. This side would be usually typically filled up on criminal days with defendants, the in custody ones, and then on the right side would be where the DA or the state representative would be.
And kind of like the equipment where I'm standing, there's an Elmo there.
Absolutely, yeah, just like that. And attorneys will walk up, they'll give arguments, and that main door right there is the access point for the public or attorneys that are going into the courtroom that day. Anyone that's essentially not a courtroom staff member is typically walking through that main door there.
And you're talking about the 2 double doors?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, we're starting to talk over each other, so why don't we make sure she gets her question out, and then counsel make sure he gets his answer out, okay?
Showing you state.
Yeah, it's hard when
8.
you're not used to testifying.
What are we looking at?
This is kind of my view, even though that's not necessarily my chair, that's the judge's chair. I'm just kind of turned to the side, but this is my angle. This is my monitor right here. And this is kind of the view if you were to stand up in that little room section that's blocked off. This right here is that wall area that we were talking about earlier that's completely closed off. And that's the court clerks right here in the recorder. And this is, like I said, my monitor. So this is kind of would be my view.
Okay, and I'm going to zoom in on something really quickly here.
Mhm.
Do you see the red and green buttons right there?
Yeah, I do.
What are those?
I'm not exactly sure what they are. I think they're panic buttons or silent alarm. I'm not exactly sure. Or they may be, I know there are certain buttons that lock the courtroom doors. It could be those, but I'm not exactly sure on what those are. I really had to use them.
Okay. Showing you states 9. What is this?
So this is kind of the angle that you would see if you were, like, let's say, a defendant walking through that door that in custodies, almost where that holding cell is. So once you walk out, if you were to just look left, this is the angle you would see. This is that door that I was talking about earlier that leads to like chambers and offices and things like that. And then if you see on the right side, if you were to loop around, that is how we would walk up to where we would be sitting, me and the judge. But this is just kind of that angle there. This chair to the bottom side, this is like typically an extern may sit there, but it's usually either an officer or no one sitting there.
Thank you. Showing you states 10. What are we looking at in this photograph?
Yeah, this would be the witness stand. This is there's a monitor similar to how it is here, where anything that's being shown on the Elmo can be seen by the witness. That would be the judge's chair right here. That's the judge's monitor. That would be my monitor. There's typically 2 chairs up here, so I would have a much smaller chair right there. And this is that door that we would enter through. This is kind of that one access point, the wraparound. And this is kind of like just a granite wall that we have that sits behind the judge.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I may have missed it. You may have already answered this question. Right here, is there any way to access the area where the judge sits other than to climb over that wall?
No. These doors, those aren't doors. It's like a wall almost.
And just like in here, the witness stand is lower than where the judge sits?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
In the back hallway that you've referred to, that staff and in particular you and judge would use to get to the courtroom, are there exits to the ground floor? Like, are there stairs back there?
Like in that backside to go down?
Like in the rear hallway?
Yes, yeah, there are. If you were to walk out of that that door I was talking about near the copier, if you were to just turn around, there is a big door right there where there's a stairwell, and you can go down. I'll often use that stairwell to go down to we have like a little supply office to get some extra Sharpies or whatever I need or whatever the judge needs.
What about elevators? Are there elevators in the rear?
Yes, there's elevators. Instead of making a right, if you were to just make a left, there's elevators right there as soon as you were to walk out. And then there's also, if further down the hall, another pair of elevators as well.
Thank you. Showing you states 11. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the angle from the witness stand. That's that monitor that I was saying, similar to this one here. That's the microphone, those doors for the public to go through. And this is just kind of that angle if you were to be sitting at the witness stand.
And you indicated that on January 3rd, there was a correctional officer sitting right there?
Yes.
Showing you states 12. Does this appear to be a photograph of Judge Holthus's bench?
Yes, absolutely. That's just right. She'd be sitting right on top of there, and then I'd be on that right side.
And there's a bit of a glare in this photograph, but is there a nameplate there too?
Yes, and it says Honorable Judge Mary Kay Holthus.
Showing you states 13. Is this a close-up of that?
That is it right there.
Nameplate?
Mhm.
And it says Judge Mariki Holtis.
Yes.
Showing you states 14. Does this appear to be the desk or counter area in the judge's bench area and where you sit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'd be on that right side where this monitor is. This is that kind of wall that cuts off between where the judge would sit and then the court clerk on that left side. Again, this is the judge's monitor, and then this is kind of that front view and that nameplate that we were just discussing.
Showing you states 15. What is this?
So this is once you were to walk out that door between kind of like the chambers and those offices, kind of where the whole court clerks and the entire court staff essentially walks through. If you weren't going down that long hallway that we discussed earlier, where the court clerk and recorder sits, this would be making a left. So this is how me and the judge, this is the only access area to that little kind of sitting area where the judge would be, and then myself. So every time that we go into court, whether it's for a trial or a calendar, we go through this area. That door that's closed right now is usually open, and we just kind of walk through. There's kind of like 2 steps, and you just walk up, we make a right, and then I'd be sitting right on this right side here, and then the judge would be kind of right here.
Okay. And going back to 19, this is the door that you're referring to, correct?
Exactly, yes.
That you and judge enter into?
Yes.
Are there cameras in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the JAVS system?
Yes.
Is that one of the recording systems in the courtroom?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not the system will kind of alternate between various cameras in the courtroom?
Absolutely, yeah. Depending on whatever the mic picks up, it'll usually could change from the witness stand to the judge, and also whoever's speaking, whether it's an attorney or a defendant, or kind of whoever's on that other side where the desks are.
So it's activated by noise.
Absolutely.
And JAVS, what does that stand for?
That I don't know. I don't know what JEF stands for exactly. But I know, it's just kind of a recording system that can catch whatever's going on. And if like we need to look back or like if the court clerks are making their minutes, they'll typically go back and watch the JAVs to hear exactly what attorneys were saying or the judge, so that way they can get an accurate depiction of what had happened and occurred during court.
And that's, by the way, JAVS is Jefferson Audio Visual System. Just an FYI.
Thank you. Learn something new every day. Is there also a fixed camera in the courtroom? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe there is. Yes.
And do you know approximately where in the courtroom it's mounted?
I believe it's, I don't exactly know for sure. So I don't, I'm pretty sure it's kind of right behind us looking at the entire courtroom. But I don't know for certain, but I know there is one that kind of looks down, but I think that will partly be activated by the JAVs as well.
Is JAVS always running during the course of the criminal calendar?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Now, to go to January 3rd of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
On that date, you were not originally supposed to be working, correct?
Correct.
Were you supposed to have the day off?
I don't know if I was supposed to have the day off, but that morning I woke up and I was actually studying for the bar at that time. The bar was taking place in February. So this was January 3rd. It was kind of our first, it was right after New Year's. So it was our first criminal calendar of the year, and actually our only criminal calendar that week. So, and it was on a Wednesday. So my boss had texted me, one of the core staffs, and said, hey, why don't you take the day off? It's not that long of a calendar. Why don't you study? It's coming up here pretty soon. It's a pretty stressful exam. So, you can go ahead and just take the day to study. And for whatever reason, I just really wanted to be there. I wanted to, it was our only criminal calendar that week. And it was just something that, I don't know, I felt like I just should be at. So I told her thank you, but instead I decided to go into work that day.
And on that date, did you sit next to the judge like you would during any other calendar?
Absolutely.
Were you multitasking like you indicated you typically do?
Yeah. I'd prep the files that day, kind of start off as any other. And during calendar, I remember just going through emails, checking to see if there's any updates. Sometimes attorneys will email you right during calendar. So just kind of checking and making sure everything was running smoothly.
During a typical criminal calendar, I know you indicated that there was at least one correctional officer seated in the witness stand in the courtroom.
Yes.
Are there typically more than one correctional officer?
There usually is. Sometimes there's only one. We always have our marshal there as well. But especially if it's like a lot of defendants that are in custody coming in, there will be maybe 2 correctional officers, occasionally 3, but usually, like I said, you'll have the one. You'll always have the marshal there as well.
Are there times when the correctional officers who are present in the courtroom might remove some of the in custody defendants and take them back to the Clark County Detention Center? Absolutely, yeah. Especially if there's a lot of defendants in a particular day, or maybe if there's like some sort of intermission or break, whatever ones we've kind of gotten through the in custodies, they'll go ahead and kind of uncuff whoever together or whoever hasn't gone, and then they'll go and walk those individuals through that door that we were talking about, and then onto CCDC. But there will always be at least one correctional officer in the courtroom if there are in custody defendants,
Yes.
correct?
Oh yeah.
And you indicated that there's also a court marshal that's in the courtroom during criminal calendars?
Always. Yeah.
And is that Marshal Shane Brandon in your courtroom?
Yes, it is.
And typically, how is he dressed?
In full uniform. He's got, a vest on, and he looks almost like a police officer. It's like a brown tan shirt that he has, and they said a vest. He's got a full belt. He's got a gun on him. He's got a badge, everything like that.
With regards to the correctional officers that are in the courtroom, are they typically dressed in uniform?
Oh yes, yeah, almost identical to the marshal.
And readily identifiable as law enforcement officers?
Yes, absolutely.
Are they typically armed
Yes.
with a firearm?
Yes.
On January 3rd of 2024, do you recall a defendant being on your calendar that day by the name of Deobra Redden?
Yes, I do.
Do you see that individual in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point to him and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing today?
Sure. That's him right there, wearing. Looks like I can't really see the color tie. Almost like a purple tie,
Okay,
blue
he's all
shirt,
like,
standing
look
up
at
right
me,
there.
dude.
May the record reflect that he's identified the defendant, Your Honor.
Let the record so reflect.
Now,
Serious, like you don't think that guy can see you? You have to stand up and say, "Yep, that me. I did that." God Almighty, y'all. Y'all, I hate to do this. We're gonna pause it here. Y'all may go forward if you wish. I'm gonna put this down in the taskbar. We're going to pause it there because I have a hard stop in a few minutes. So I need to close this up, wrap it up. I haven't eaten a stitch of food all day, barely gone to the bathroom. So I've got a meeting to go to, and I got to drive out of town for it. So you guys be blessed. Thank you for joining me. We will continue this tomorrow, wrap it up. If I get back at a decent hour tonight, if I'm feeling well, I will go live. In the meantime, y'all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so, so much for all of those who joined me today and hung out with me earlier. We had a fabulous live all morning and early afternoon. We will be back tomorrow morning for court on the the shooting, that thing. And then we'll go into here. I do have to get some homework done tomorrow and a test to take tomorrow night. So we'll get it all done. We'll get her done. But in the meantime, you guys have a fabulous afternoon. I'm going to run and see you either later tonight or tomorrow morning. In the meantime, be kind to somebody who's having a hard day. Smile at somebody who's not smiling at you because your smile may be the only one they get all day. Blessings. See you later.